I'm Stella, 32 female. I live in a small, cozy apartment with my son, Alfie, making a living as a freelance writer, which allows me to be there for him. For a long time, my life felt like a constant effort to stay afloat while navigating the choppy waters of my family's expectations. This story is about the moment I realized I wasn't just navigating. I was being actively held underwater, and the decision I made to finally swim for shore. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The invitation had come via group text from my older sister, Tara. Dad's 61st birthday dinner? It read, adorned with a string of festive emojis that felt utterly disingenuous. We've booked a table at the Gilded Spoon for Saturday at 7 p.m. It's a fantastic steakhouse downtown. Be there. It wasn't a request, it was a summons. The Gilded Spoon was one of those places where the appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery budget, a fact Tara knew better than anyone. It was her and her husband Simon's favorite spot, a place they frequented to broadcast their success. For me, a single mom raising my 7-year-old son Alfie on a writer's unpredictable income, it was a minefield of quiet humiliations. My immediate instinct was to decline. I could already picture the condescending glances, the subtle digs about my finances, and the way my father, Thomas, would sigh with disappointment whenever I spoke about my life. I typed out a polite excuse. Thanks so much for the invite. Alfie and I would love to, but that's a bit out of our budget right now. We'd be happy to celebrate with Dad another time, maybe a nice lunch at our place. I hit send, feeling a small sense of relief. But the reply was swift and sharp, not from Tara, but from my father himself. Stella, it's my birthday. I expect my entire family to be there. Don't make this difficult. The words were a familiar guilt-laced cocktail I had been served my whole life. My mother, Sheila, followed up with a softer, but equally manipulative message. Please, dear, it would mean the world to your father. Tara is handling the arrangements. Tara handling the arrangements was precisely the problem. My sister didn't do anything without an angle, and her favorite angle was making me feel small. The pressure mounted over the next few days. Tara called, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Stella, don't worry about the cost. Simon and I are happy to cover you. It's a celebration, we just want everyone together. This offer wasn't generous, it was a power play. Accepting meant I was indebted to them, placing me firmly in a position of inferiority for the evening. It meant I would have to be grateful, to smile and nod while they steered the conversation toward their latest luxury purchase or their children's expensive private school. It was a trap, and I knew it. But refusing now would paint me as ungrateful and petulant, the difficult daughter who couldn't put her pride aside for one family dinner. Okay, Tara, I finally conceded, my voice tight. We'll be there. Her triumphant, wonderful, was like a key turning in a lock, trapping me in the evening I had dreaded. The week leading up to the dinner was fraught with anxiety. I checked the Gilded Spoon's menu online, my stomach clenching at the prices. A single steak and tray was over $100. Even the side dishes were priced like main courses. I calculated and recalculated my budget, trying to find a way to contribute something, anything, to avoid the shame of being completely covered by Tara and Simon. I even considered pre-feeding Alfie so he wouldn't be hungry, a thought that made me feel like a complete failure as a mother. My son, with his bright eyes and boundless energy, deserved better than a mother who had to strategize about how to afford a meal. I pushed the thought away, telling myself it was just one night. I would endure it, for my father's sake, and then retreat back to the safety of my own life. When Saturday arrived, I dressed Alfie in his nicest button-down shirt, and I put on a simple black dress, something I hoped would make me look elegant, but also allow me to fade into the background. As we drove downtown, Alfie was buzzing with excitement. He loved his grandparents and his aunt, even if he didn't fully understand the complex currents of resentment that flowed just beneath the surface of our family gatherings. Are we going to have cake, Mom? He asked, kicking his feet against the back of my seat. I hope so, sweetie, I said, forcing a smile. It's Grandpa's birthday, so there will definitely be dessert. His innocence was a stark contrast to my own jaded apprehension. We were the last to arrive. The rest of the family was already seated at a large round table in a dimly lit, opulent dining room. My father sat at the head. Looking stern and regal, Tara was beside him, radiant in a designer dress with Simon next to her looking smug. My mother gave me a weak, nervous smile from across the table. Tara's two children, Emily and Josh, were already engrossed in their tablets, oblivious to the simmering tension. "There you are," Tara chirped, her voice a little too loud. "We were about to start without you." I murmured an apology about traffic and slid into the chair next to my mother, pulling Alfie onto my lap. The waiter, a tall man with a professional but cold demeanor, immediately appeared at my elbow. "Can I get the little one a booster seat?" he asked. Before I could answer, Tara waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, he'll be fine. He can sit on Stella's lap." It was a small thing, a tiny assertion of control, but it set the tone for the entire evening. It was a clear message. Alfie, and by extension me, were an afterthought, an inconvenience to be managed. The chair next to me was empty. There was no place setting for my son. I had to ask the waiter for an extra chair and a plate, feeling the heat of my father's glare as I did. The trap had been set, and I had walked right into it, with my son in my arms. The waiter returned and placed a menu in front of me, a heavy, leather-bound book that felt like it was worth more than my shoes. Alfie, now in his own chair, looked at the menu with wide, uncomprehending eyes. He couldn't read most of the words, but he could see the lack of pictures. "What's a filet mignon?" he whispered to me, mispronouncing the words adorably. I smiled and whispered back, "It's a type of steak, sweetie." The waiter began taking drink orders. Simon ordered a bottle of expensive red wine for the table, making a grand show of sniffing the cork and nodding his approval. Tara ordered a sparkling water with a twist of lime, my father a single malt scotch, and my mother a simple glass of white wine. When the waiter turned to me, I felt a familiar panic. "Just water for me, please," I said quietly. "And for him?" the waiter asked, nodding toward Alfie. "Water is fine for him too," I replied. Tara overheard and let out a little laugh. "Oh, Stella, don't be silly. Let him have a juice or a soda, it's a party." She looked at the waiter. "He'll have a Shirley Temple." It was framed as a generous offer, but it was another subtle jab. She was highlighting my frugality, my inability to even afford a fancy drink for my son, and fixing the problem for me. I felt my cheeks burn, but I forced a smile and said, "Thank you, Tara, that's very kind." Alfie's eyes lit up at the promise of a special drink, and I couldn't bring myself to refuse and spoil his excitement. The drinks arrived, and the conversation began to flow, mostly centered around Simon's recent promotion at the car dealership and Tara's success in selling a multi-million-dollar home. My father listened, beaming with pride, asking pointed questions that allowed them to elaborate on their achievements. "A corner office, you say, Simon? Well, that's what hard work gets you," he boomed, taking a sip of his scotch. He didn't once ask about my writing career. In his eyes, my freelance work was a hobby, not a real job. When it was time to order food, the tension I'd been feeling all evening tightened into a knot in my stomach. The waiter stood with his pen poised. "We'll start with the calamari and the truffle fries," Simon announced, not bothering to consult anyone else. Tara then turned to her children. "Josh, you want the New York strip, right? And Emily, the lobster mac and cheese for you?" They both nodded, their eyes still glued to their screens. My father declared he would have the ribeye, medium rare. My mother quietly ordered the salmon. Tara ordered the filet mignon, and Simon, the porterhouse. The waiter's pen scratched across his notepad, recording thousands of dollars worth of food. Then, all eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. "I think I'll just have the house salad," I said, trying to sound casual. "And Alfie, he'll have the chicken tenders from the kids' menu." There was a brief, heavy silence. My father cleared his throat. "Stella, don't be ridiculous. It's a steakhouse. Order a steak." "I'm not very hungry, Dad," I lied. "The salad will be perfect." The lie was thin, and we all knew it. I was trying to minimize the cost, to lessen the burden of Tara's generosity. Tara, however, wasn't going to let me get away with it that easily. She gave the waiter a pitying smile. "My sister is watching her figure," she said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Just the salad for her, and we actually didn't order for her son. He's a bit of a picky eater. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about, Tara? I just ordered him chicken tenders. She shook her head, her expression one of faux concern. Oh, Stella, you know how he is. He'll take 2 bites and be done. It would be a waste. Then she flagged down a passing busboy who was carrying a basket of bread. Could we just get one of these for the little boy? She asked him sweetly. The busboy, confused, handed it over. Tara took the basket and placed it directly in front of Alfie. It was a simple basket with a few plain bread rolls and some butter packets. There you go, sweetie, she said to him, ignoring me completely. You can have this while the grown-ups eat. My 7-year-old son looked at the bread, then at his cousins who were about to be served lobster and steak, and his face began to crumble. He looked at me, his eyes wide with confusion and hurt. But, Mom said I could have chicken, he whispered, his voice trembling. I was paralyzed with a mixture of rage and shame. My entire family was watching. My sister had just told my son in front of everyone that he wasn't worthy of a real meal. She had reduced him to a charity case, someone who should be satisfied with the free table bread while her own children feasted. The worst part was my father's reaction. He looked at me, not with sympathy, but with annoyance. You should have packed him something, Stella, he said, his voice low and cutting. You know how these things go. You should have been prepared. Packed him something? As if we were going on a picnic, not to a supposed family celebration at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. My mother just stared down at her hands, refusing to meet my gaze. She would not defend me. She never did. In that moment, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break, but a quiet, definitive fracture. The years of being treated as less than, of having my struggles used as a punchline, of my son being treated as an afterthought, all coalesced into a single, clarifying point of pain. I looked at Tara's smug face, at my father's dismissive glare, and then at my son's crestfallen expression. I just smiled, a tight, cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. Noted, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The waiter returned, looking flustered. So, is it just the salad, madam, and nothing for the boy? I stood up, my chair scraping against the polished floor. Actually, I announced, my voice clear and steady now, I need to make a quick phone call, and you can cancel my order. As I walked away from the table, phone in hand, the memory of that bread basket burned in my mind. It wasn't just about the food or the money. It was a symbol of my entire life within that family. I had always been the second best, the afterthought, the one who was expected to be grateful for scraps while my sister, Tara, was showered with praise and opportunity. This history of being treated as less than wasn't a new development. It was the foundation upon which my relationship with my family was built. It started in childhood, in ways that were subtle at first. Tara was 2 years older, and she was the star. She got the lead roles in school plays, the A+ grades, the effortless popularity. I was the quiet, creative one, the bookworm who lived more in my imagination than in the real world. My parents, particularly my father, saw Tara's ambition as a virtue and my creativity as a whimsical, impractical hobby. Tara's going to be a CEO someday, he would boast to friends. About me, he would say, Stella's got her head in the clouds. Their financial support, or lack thereof, was another clear differentiator. When Tara wanted to go to a prestigious summer camp for debate, my parents dipped into their savings without hesitation. When I asked for a new set of paints or to attend a writing workshop, I was met with lectures about budgeting and the importance of saving for a real career. The message was clear. Tara's interests were an investment, mine were an expense. This disparity continued into our college years. They co-signed loans for Tara to attend a private university out of state, but when my turn came, I was encouraged to stay local, to attend the community college first to save money. I ended up working 2 jobs to put myself through the state university, graduating with a mountain of debt that Tara, whose loans were quietly paid off by my parents as a graduation gift, never had to worry about. When Tara married Simon, a man as obsessed with status as she was, my parents threw them a lavish wedding that they talked about for years. When I fell in love with a kind, gentle musician, my father was openly disdainful. What's his 5-year plan, Stella? He'd ask. You can't build a life on guitar strings and dreams. Our wedding was a small, courthouse affair, paid for with our own meager savings. My parents attended, but their disapproval was a palpable presence. When my marriage ended a few years later, leaving me a single mother to Alfie, it was seen not as a tragedy, but as the predictable outcome of my poor choices. My family's support was conditional, and I had failed to meet the conditions. Tara's life, in their eyes, was a success story. She had the successful husband, the big house in the suburbs, the two perfect children. My life was a cautionary tale. Family gatherings became a performance, with me cast in the role of the struggling single mother. Tara would offer me her children's hand-me-down clothes for Alfie, not as a kind gesture between sisters, but as a public display of her charity. My father would offer unsolicited financial advice, always with a critical edge. If you had just gotten a business degree like Tara, he'd begin, you wouldn't have to worry so much about every penny. My mother would wring her hands and say things like, "We just worry about you, dear," which was her code for "we are disappointed in you." They never acknowledged the long hours I worked, the successful articles I had published, or the incredible, happy, well-adjusted child I was raising on my own. They only saw what I lacked: a husband, a high-paying corporate job, and a life that mirrored their own values. The bread basket incident was simply the culmination of a lifetime of these small, calculated cruelties. It was the moment the subtext became text. My son was now part of the performance, cast in the role of the poor relation, the one who should be grateful for the leftovers from the feast. Handing him that basket wasn't a thoughtless act, it was a deliberate reinforcement of the family hierarchy. It was Tara telling me, my father, and the world that she was the provider, the successful one, and I was the charity case. My father's comment, "You should have packed him something," was just as cruel. It placed the blame squarely on me, absolving them of any responsibility for their own heartless behavior. It was my fault for being poor, my fault for not anticipating their cruelty, my fault for making them feel uncomfortable with my presence. As I stood in the quiet, carpeted hallway outside the restaurant's restrooms, I wasn't just angry, I was done. Done with the apologies, done with the excuses, done with the endless, soul-crushing effort of trying to earn their approval. The phone in my hand felt heavy. My first instinct was to call my friend Georgina, to vent, to cry, to have her tell me I wasn't crazy. But then another thought, colder and clearer, pushed its way to the forefront. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about justice. It was about the fact that my family's entire sense of superiority was built on a foundation of lies, a financial facade that I had long suspected but never had the courage to investigate. Their wealth, their success, was it all as real as they pretended it to be? I had heard whispers, seen small cracks in their perfect veneer over the years. Tara's obsession with brand names, Simon's constant talk of big deals that never seemed to materialize into anything concrete, my father's increasing bitterness about his retirement funds. Were they really in a position to look down on me? Or was this all a desperate, elaborate performance to convince themselves, as much as me, that they were winning? In that hallway, under the dim, elegant lighting, a new plan began to form. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to get answers. The phone call I was about to make wasn't going to be to a friend for comfort. It was going to be the first step in tearing down the entire rotten structure of my family's lies. The phone call I made that night was not to my friend Georgina, but to a private investigator. It felt like a ridiculously dramatic step, something out of a movie, but the cold fury that had settled in my heart demanded more than just venting. It demanded facts. I had a name, a man named David Chen, recommended to me a year ago by a client for whom I had written some web content. He was discreet, professional, and surprisingly affordable. I had saved his number, never thinking I would need it for something so personal. Standing in that hallway, I explained the situation in a low, steady voice. I wasn't interested in personal drama, I told him. I needed a clear, unbiased picture of my family's financial situation. Specifically, Simon's car dealership, Tara's real estate career, and my father's retirement accounts. I wanted to know if the grand performance of their wealth was backed by anything real. David listened patiently, asked a few clarifying questions, and then quoted me a price for a preliminary investigation. It was more money than I could comfortably afford, but as I authorized the payment, I felt a sense of calm determination. It was an investment in the truth. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. To my family, I was distant. I didn't answer Tara's texts asking why I had left the dinner so abruptly. I let my father's angry voicemails go unanswered. I sent my mother a brief message saying Alfie and I were fine, but needed some space. I knew this was only fueling their narrative of me as the overly sensitive, dramatic daughter, but I didn't care. My focus was elsewhere. I spent my days working on my writing projects, playing with Alfie in the park, and maintaining a semblance of normalcy. But in the evenings, after my son was asleep, I would pore over the information David Chen was sending me. His updates came in encrypted emails, each one a small piece of a puzzle that was becoming clearer and more shocking with every new detail. The first cracks appeared in Simon's facade. My brother-in-law wasn't a manager at a prestigious car dealership. He was a salesman, and a struggling one at that. He worked on commission, and his sales record for the past 2 years had been abysmal. The dealership was facing financial difficulties, and Simon's position was far from secure. The big deals he was always boasting about were exaggerations, small sales inflated to sound like major coups. The fancy car he drove wasn't owned. It was a demonstrator model from the dealership, a perk that could be revoked at any time. He was drowning in personal debt, with multiple maxed-out credit cards and a second mortgage on their house that I never knew existed. Tara's booming, real estate career was another carefully constructed illusion. While she was a licensed agent, she was not the top-tier seller she pretended to be. David's report showed that she had only closed 2 sales in the past year, both for modest properties with small commissions. The multi-million-dollar home she had mentioned at dinner, she had been a junior agent on the listing, a small cog in a large machine, but she had presented it as her own personal triumph. Her social media was a curated feed of luxury homes and glamorous client meetings, but the reality was that she spent most of her days cold calling and struggling to find leads. Their beautiful suburban house, the one they lorded over me, was mortgaged to the hilt, and they had recently been served a pre-foreclosure notice. They were living on the edge, projecting an image of wealth while their financial world was crumbling around them. The most painful revelation, however, came from the investigation into my father's finances. After his retirement, he had taken his modest pension and, against all sound advice, had invested a significant portion of it with a financial advisor recommended by Simon. This advisor turned out to be little more than a con artist running a high-risk investment scheme. My father, so proud and so convinced of his own superior judgment, had been duped. The bulk of his retirement savings was gone. What little he had left was in a standard savings account, earning minimal interest. His constant criticism of my financial choices, his lectures on my irresponsibility, were all a projection. He was terrified, and he was taking that terror out on the safest target he had, me. As I pieced it all together, the anger I had felt at the restaurant began to morph into a cold, clear pity. Their cruelty wasn't born from a place of superiority, but from a place of deep, gnawing insecurity. They had to push me down to feel like they were standing on higher ground. They had to make me feel small because their own lives were shrinking, their own lies threatening to suffocate them. Their entire identity was wrapped up in the appearance of success, and they were willing to sacrifice their relationship with me and the happiness of my son to maintain that illusion. My friend Georgina, whom I finally confided in, was aghast. As a lawyer, she was also practical. "So, what now, Stella?" she asked, sitting at my kitchen table, a copy of David's report spread between us. "You have all this information. Are you going to confront them?" I shook my head. A private confrontation would be useless. They would deny, deflect, and gaslight me. They would turn it around and make it my fault, accusing me of snooping, of being jealous, of trying to tear the family apart. No, a quiet confrontation wouldn't work. The humiliation they had inflicted on me and on my son had been public. The resolution, I decided, needed to be public as well. "I have a plan," I told Georgina, a flicker of an idea starting to form in my mind. My mother's 60th birthday is next month. Tara is planning a big party for her at their house. Georgina raised an eyebrow. You're in. Not thinking of going, are you? A slow smile spread across my face. Oh, I'm going, I said, and I'm bringing a gift, the truth. The next month was a masterclass in deception. I reinitiated contact with my family, playing the part of the dutiful, apologetic daughter. I called my mother first, my voice full of practiced regret. Mom, I am so sorry about how I acted at Dad's birthday dinner, I said, the false words tasting like ash in my mouth. I was stressed about work, and I overreacted. I feel terrible about leaving like that. My mother, a woman who craved peace at any cost, accepted my apology with relieved gratitude. Oh, Stella, I'm so glad you called. We were all so worried. She was the easy part. My father was harder. I left him a voicemail, keeping it short and respectful, apologizing for my emotional outburst and promising to make it up to him. He didn't call back, but my mother assured me that he had heard the message and was calming down. The most difficult performance was with Tara. I sent her a long, rambling text message, admitting that I was jealous of her success and that I sometimes let my insecurities get the best of me. I told her that what she did for Alfie with the bread basket was, in hindsight, a misunderstanding, and that I was the one who had made the situation awkward. It was a humiliating message to write, every word a lie, but it was a necessary strategic move. Tara, predictably, lapped it up. Her reply was condescendingly gracious. It's okay, Stella, I understand, it must be hard for you. Let's just put it behind us. She then, just as I had hoped, extended an olive branch that was really another power play. Mom's 60th is in a few weeks. We're having a big party at our house. You and Alfie have to come. It will be a chance for us to reconnect properly. I accepted immediately, thanking her profusely, playing the part of the grateful little sister. With my attendance secured, I began to set the stage. The party was going to be a large affair. Tara had invited dozens of people, family, friends, neighbors, colleagues from her and Simon's workplaces. It was designed to be another showcase of their perfect life. This was the stage I needed. My plan was not just to expose their lies, but to do it in a way that was undeniable and inescapable. Georgina, my lawyer friend, was my co-conspirator. We met several times, refining the plan, ensuring every detail was perfect. She advised me on the legalities, making sure that my revelations, while devastating, were not slanderous. Everything I was going to say was based on the verifiable facts from David Chen's report. The centerpiece of my plan was a gift for my mother. I told Tara I was putting together a special surprise, a slideshow of old family photos set to music, a tribute to my mother's life. Tara loved the idea. Oh, Stella, that's so thoughtful. That's the perfect contribution you can make. She saw it as a harmless, sentimental project, something the creative, emotional sister would do. She had no idea that my slideshow would contain more than just nostalgic pictures. I spent hours in front of my computer, not just scanning old photos, but carefully crafting a presentation. I wove the family pictures of birthdays, holidays, and vacations together with a narrative. The first few minutes would be exactly what everyone expected, a heartwarming tribute to my mother. But as the slideshow progressed, it would slowly and deliberately pivot. I embedded screenshots from David's report, redacted bank statements, public property records showing the pre-foreclosure notice on Tara's house, Simon's dismal sales figures. I didn't include everything, just a few key, irrefutable pieces of evidence. The story would be told not through angry accusations, but through a calm, factual narration that I would deliver live. The day before the party, I made one more crucial arrangement. I knew my father's biggest source of shame was the loss of his retirement savings. I also knew he had an old friend, a man named Bill, who was a respected financial planner in their community. I knew Bill would be at the party. I called him, reintroducing myself as Thomas's daughter. I told him I was concerned about my father, that I believed he had been the victim of a fraudulent investment scheme, and that I was worried he was too proud to ask for help. I asked Bill if he would be willing to talk to my father, to offer his professional advice in a gentle, supportive way. Bill, a genuinely kind man, was immediately concerned and promised he would make a point of speaking with my father at the party. The final piece of my plan involved Alfie. I would not subject him to that toxic environment again. I arranged for him to have a sleepover at a friend's house, a special treat with pizza and movies. He was thrilled. As I dropped him off, he gave me a big hug. "Are you going to Grandma's party, Mom?" he asked. "Yes, sweetie, I have to give Grandma her present." "Is it a good present?" he asked. I looked into his innocent, trusting eyes, the same eyes that had looked so hurt and confused at that restaurant. "I think it's a very important one," I replied, my voice thick with an emotion he couldn't possibly understand. As I drove away, I felt a sense of calm resolve. All the pieces were in place. The stage was set. The audience would be arriving soon. All I had to do was walk on stage and deliver my lines. The performance of my life was about to begin. I arrived at Tara's house fashionably late, just as the party was hitting its peak. The large, open-plan living space was filled with people, their chatter and laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Tara and Simon were in their element, flitting from group to group, playing the perfect hosts. My sister was wearing a dress that I knew from her social media cost a fortune, and Simon had a practiced, confident smile plastered on his face. From the outside, they were the picture of success. But I saw the subtle signs of desperation. The slightly too loud laughter, the way Simon's eyes darted around the room, the almost manic energy with which Tara refilled people's wine glasses. They weren't just hosting a party, they were shoring up their defenses, desperately trying to project an image that was crumbling from the inside out. My mother, the guest of honor, looked happy but overwhelmed. My father stood near the fireplace, looking bored and irritated, a glass of scotch in his hand. I made my way through the crowd, greeting people with polite smiles, accepting compliments on my dress, and playing the part of the devoted daughter and sister. I found my mother and gave her a hug, wishing her a happy birthday. I even managed a civil nod to my father. Then I found Tara. "The slideshow is ready," I told her. "I have it on a USB stick. Just let me know when you want to play it." "Oh, wonderful," she said, clapping her hands together. "Let's do it right after the cake. We'll gather everyone in the living room. It will be the grand finale." She had no idea how right she was. An hour later, the moment arrived. The happy birthday song was sung, the cake was cut, and Tara, champagne flute in hand, clinked her glass for attention. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. My wonderful sister Stella has prepared a very special tribute for my mother." "Stella, the floor is yours." All eyes turned to me. I walked to the large flat-screen television above the fireplace, my heart pounding a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. I inserted the USB stick, and the lights dimmed. The first images appeared on the screen, black and white photos of my mother as a young girl, pictures of her wedding day, snapshots of her holding Tara and me as babies. A soft, instrumental piece of music played in the background. The room was filled with appreciative murmurs. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Tara gave me a proud, patronizing smile. The slideshow continued, moving through our childhoods, school pictures, family vacations, Christmas mornings. I began to speak, my voice clear and amplified by the sound system Tara had set up. "Family is a complicated thing," I began, my eyes scanning the crowd. "We create stories about ourselves, about who we are. We build these beautiful facades to show the world. This is our family story." The pictures on the screen began to change. A photo of Tara and Simon on a lavish trip to Italy was replaced by a screenshot of their bank statement, the negative balance clearly visible. "We tell a story of success," I continued, my voice even, "of world travels and financial security." A picture of their perfect house appeared, immediately followed by the pre-foreclosure notice. "We tell a story of stability, of a beautiful home where we can welcome our friends and family." The mood and the room shifted. The murmurs died down, replaced by a tense, shocked silence. Tara's smile froze on her face. Simon's face went pale. My father took a step forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. I continued, my voice never wavering. A picture of Simon boasting next to a luxury car was followed by a document showing it was a dealership demo. "We tell a story of professional achievement," I said. Then, the slideshow turned to my father. A photo of him on his retirement day, smiling and confident, was juxtaposed with a redacted document from David Chen's report, detailing the catastrophic losses from the investment scheme. We tell a story of wise planning, of a comfortable retirement earned through years of hard work. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. I looked directly at my father, whose face had crumpled in on itself. I saw his friend, Bill, the financial planner, move quietly to his side, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Then I turned my gaze to Tara. "And sometimes," I said, my voice dropping slightly, "we tell stories to make ourselves feel bigger by making others feel small." The screen changed one last time. It was a picture I had taken with my phone that night at the restaurant. A crystal-clear image of the sad little bread basket sitting in front of my son, Alfie, his face a mask of disappointment, while in the background, his cousin's plates were laden with steak and lobster. "We tell our children stories about their worth," I said, my voice finally cracking with emotion. "We tell them they are loved, that they are valued, that they deserve a seat at the table. But the stories we tell with our actions are the ones they truly hear." I raised my water glass in a mock toast. "So, here's to family," I announced, my voice ringing through the silent room. "And here's to the truth. May we all find the courage to live it. Happy birthday, Mom." I lowered my glass and turned to face my family. The facade had not just cracked, it had been utterly demolished. Tara was staring at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. Simon looked like he was going to be sick. My mother was openly weeping. And my father. My father just looked broken. The party was over. The grand finale had been delivered. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. People started murmuring, then talking in hushed, urgent tones. They began to leave, offering awkward, pitying glances at my mother and avoiding eye contact with Tara and Simon completely. The beautiful party, the carefully constructed showcase of their success, had dissolved into a scene of mass social exodus. Within 15 minutes, the house was empty, save for the family at its fractured core. Tara was the first to break the silence. She flew at me, her face contorted with rage, but Simon grabbed her arm, holding her back. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "You ruined everything. Our lives, Mom's birthday, everything." "Your lives were already ruined, Tara," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You were living a lie and you were punishing me and my son for it. I didn't ruin anything, I just turned on the lights." My father, who had sunk into an armchair, finally looked up at me. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary shame. "The money, Stella, is it all really gone?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded slowly. "Most of it, Dad, but Bill is a good man. He can help you figure out what's next." He just shook his head, burying his face in his hands. My mother, surprisingly, was the one who showed a flicker of strength. She walked over to me, her face streaked with tears. "The bread basket," she said, her voice trembling. "I knew it was wrong, I knew it, and I didn't say a word. I am so sorry, Stella." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard her apologize for her inaction. And in that moment, I saw a glimmer of the mother I had always wished she would be. I didn't stay long, there was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out the door, leaving them to sift through the wreckage of their own making. The drive home was surreal. I didn't feel triumphant or victorious. I just felt quiet. I felt a profound sense of release, as if I had been carrying a massive, invisible weight for 32 years and had finally set it down. When I picked up Alfie from his sleepover the next morning, he was bubbly and happy, full of stories about the movies they had watched and the pizza they had eaten. He was completely untouched by the drama, and I swore to myself that I would keep it that way. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment. I blocked Tara and Simon's numbers, refusing to engage with their angry, accusatory text messages. I spoke to my mother a few times. She told me that Tara and Simon were in marriage counseling, trying to navigate their financial ruin. She also told me that my father, with Bill's help, was facing his financial reality head-on. He had to sell the family home I grew up in, a painful but necessary step. He and my mother were moving into a small retirement condo. He hadn't asked to speak to me, and I didn't push it. The wounds were too deep. the years of damage too extensive to be healed with a simple conversation. But the most unexpected development came a month after the party. I received a registered letter from an attorney's office. It was from my maternal grandmother, my mother's mother, who had passed away 5 years earlier. I had always been close to her. She was a sharp, intuitive woman who had seen the dynamics of our family with perfect clarity. The letter explained that she had set up a trust for me, with specific instructions that it was not to be released until 5 years after her death, or upon the dissolution of my parents' primary residence, whichever came later. My grandmother, it seemed, had anticipated my father's financial recklessness. She had protected a portion of her estate for me, ensuring that it would not be absorbed into the family drama or squandered by my father's poor decisions. It wasn't a life-changing fortune, but it was enough. It was enough to pay off my student loans. It was enough for a down payment on a small house for me and Alfie. It was enough to give me a safety net, a foundation upon which I could build our future without fear. As I sat there holding the letter, I cried. I cried for the grandmother who had loved me enough to protect me even after she was gone. I cried for the years I had spent feeling small and insecure. And I cried with relief for the future that was now stretching out before me, a future of my own making. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was validation. It was a message from the past, telling me that I was seen, that I was valued, and that I was worthy. My new life is much quieter than my old one, and I am grateful for that every day. Alfie is thriving in his new school. I have a small home office with a window that looks out onto our own little backyard. My work is going well, and for the first time, I feel a sense of professional pride that is not dependent on anyone else's approval. I have lunch with my mother once a week. Our relationship is tentative, but it is honest, stripped bare of the old pretenses. I haven't spoken to my father or Tara. Perhaps one day we will find a way to be in the same room again, but I am not holding my breath. I have learned that family is not just about blood. It is about who lifts you up, who sees your worth, and who makes you feel like you have a right to be at the table. My family now is small, just me and my son, and my dear friend Georgina. But it is a family built on love, respect, and truth. And that is an inheritance more valuable than any amount of money.